This is part 3 of chapter 77. The 14-member council, composed of some of the most learned and powerful men of the age, took its assignment seriously. Solemnity and suspense surrounded the great debate between the two champions. On the first day, Sepúlveda opened with a 3-hour speech summarizing his book on the inferiority of the Indians. Las Casas followed by reading verbatim from the 550-page treatise he had prepared specially for the occasion, which the council patiently tolerated for 5 long days. The deliberations lasted from mid-August to mid-September, when the confused council members finally asked an eminent jurist of their number to help them by summarizing the issues. When they reconvened in January of 1551, supposedly to cast their votes, few were prepared to commit themselves. The lawyers said they needed more time to study the issues. The churchmen said they had to prepare for Lent, and 2 of the members had conveniently been sent by the emperor to attend the Council of Trent. The only one of their opinions that has survived cautiously concluded that expeditions of conquest were desirable on condition that they be entrusted to captains, quote, zealous in the service of God and the king, who would act as a good example to the Indians and who would go for the good of the Indians and not for gold, end of quote. The council never agreed, and so never gave the king a decision. Both parties claimed victory. By every pragmatic test in the vast arena of the Americas, Sepúlveda would prove to be the spokesman of Spanish policy. The conquistadores adored him, sent him presents, and made his works their orthodox defense. Still, he had not won the Battle of Valladolid. Sepúlveda's works were not allowed to be published in Spain during his lifetime, and were not published anywhere until the late 18th century. His classic attack on the humanity of the Indians was finally printed in 1892. Las Casas, the voice of conscience, never wholly suppressed, remained spokesman for the professed doctrine of the Roman Church. Of course, he failed to convert conquistadores into pacifists, but he had put the stamp of the Church on the humanity of the Indians. In 1566, when the king was once again issuing licenses for discovery and conquest, the king felt constrained to exhort all to obey the laws of a just war. The relatively peaceful conquest of the Philippines after 1570 is sometimes credited to the surviving spirit of Las Casas. When Philip II, in July 13, 1573, proclaimed the law governing future Spanish discoveries and conquests, which remained in force as long as Spain possessed American colonies, he did not follow Las Casas' strict rules of peaceful conversion, but he did order Spanish conquerors always to remind the Indians, quote, that the king has sent ecclesiastics who have taught the Indians the Christian doctrine and faith by which they could be saved. He has freed them from burdens and servitude. He has made known to them the use of bread, wine, oil, and many other foods, woolen cloth, silk, linen, horses, cows, tools, arms, and many other things from Spain. He has instructed them in crafts and trades, by which they live excellently. All these advantages will those Indians enjoy who embrace our holy faith and render obedience to our king, end of quote. If the Spanish settlers found it necessary to use force against the natives, they must use no more than necessary. Under no circumstances should they enslave the Indians. In a bow to Las Casas, the king banned the word conquest in future to be replaced by pacification. When Las Casas died in 1566 at the age of 92, he left instructions that his full history of the Indies should be published only after 40 years had passed. So, quote, that if God determines to destroy Spain, it may be seen that it is because of the destruction that we have wrought in the Indies, and his just reason for it may be clearly evident, end of quote. Not merely the Spanish, but European peoples on all continents would be haunted for centuries by the question debated at Valladolid. The opportunity to reflect on the variety and unity of mankind, which the discovery of America and the outreaching colonies forced on the West, was not seized by the peoples of other parts of the world. Islam expanded as an extending empire rather than by colonies at a distance, by conquest and occupation rather than by missionary outposts. Of course, Islam inherited the biblical baggage of dispersion and original sin, and like Christianity, saw variety only as an evil. But Muslim theology and the hazards of history luckily inoculated Islam against the virus of racism. The solid dogma of the equality of all believers, the spread of Islam across Black Africa, the frequent intermarriage with slaves and concubines, all these discouraged any Muslim belief in racial levels of humanity. For Muslims, who would not separate secular from religious life, the all-important distinction was between believers and non-believers. Mere variety of social custom, where it did not violate the Quran, seemed insignificant. For quite opposite reasons, the problem of human equality was not vivid in China. There, where tradition and custom ruled, the best qualities of human life were viewed as products of Chinese tradition and custom. And the China-centric isolationist tradition kept the Chinese from encounters with remote and different peoples. Nor elsewhere in East Asia, in Japan, or Korea, do we find anything like Western racism. Only in India, among the developed cultures, did racial caste become integral with religion. Although the origin of castes is hidden in prehistoric myths, the Hindu caste system may have originated in differences between conquering Aryans, and subject Dravidians, which happen to be differences of color. Varna, the Hindu word for castes, means color, but perhaps the original application referred to something other than the color of skin. And this concludes Chapter 77. See you in the next video, I hope.